This is a warm-up sequence that I go through typically pre and post working out that I find to be very effective with groups of people that I've used with some of the wrestlers that I coach, as well as for my own personal use, whether it's before a workout or as a nightly routine to keep things loose and moving. So I'll go through each position rather quickly as I can so this doesn't become a super long video. So the first one is going to be in a push-up position. You're going to start off with elbows tucked in, pushing the ground away, chin tucked. I try and make sure there's not a dip in my lower back. I'm just taking my butt up towards the ceiling, going back towards my heels into a downward dog position. Now as I come down, I try and keep a little tension in my lower abdomen. So as I drop down, I'm really trying to control the motion as I drop into a little bit of extension. I try and make sure I'm not just collapsing, that I am keeping some tension, my thighs never touch the ground, and then I slowly transition back towards my heels, keeping tension in my stomach, keeping my pelvis tucked as I transition down towards the floor. And I would do that anywhere between 5 to 10 to 20 times. I usually will do a minimum of 10. If I'm feeling really excited, I'll do 20 to 21. And then I'll come onto my knees, hands on my hips, I pinch my elbows, I squeeze my butt, and I use my hands as a pivot point to lean back into extension. Trying to distribute that motion from the front of my hip through my lumbar and thoracic spine so it's a smooth C curve as best as it can be. So squeeze, pinch the elbows, use my hands as a pivot point to go back and back. And then a lot of times I'll come back into chin to chest. So I'll go into cervical, thoracic, and lumbar flexion. And then from here I'll go into hip extension, pitching the elbows. So I'm taking my spine all the way into extension and then all the way into flexion. So that's number 2. Number 3 gets a little tricky, and this is more of an advanced position, so not everybody's going to tolerate this. But basically, I take my legs up in the air, right? And from here, I try and use my hands to press through my shoulders as I reach my toes up. Now, I go into a rolling back sequence. So a beginner version of this may be just to press and roll back and come back up. And then a more advanced version would be to press, stay up here, let your legs drop back over top, and then use your hands to press into the floor as you press up towards the ceiling. Slowly lowering in and out of this position. If that is uncomfortable, like I said, a nice start would be just to do the rolling in and out, making sure that you try and slow the movement in and out as best you can. And then come up into tabletop, hands at the sides of your hips, shoulders down and back, pressing through the heels, coming up to the butt either touches or letting your hips come back underneath you. So pressing through the heels, trying to have my feet far enough out that when I come up I make somewhat of a right angle at my knee. I'll then drop down onto the ground, arms overhead, tension in the stomach, flattening my lower back into the floor, keeping my knees locked out and ankles flexed to get the stretch into my hamstring, lowering down slow, making sure I keep this control, keep my lower back flat as I come back up. An easier version would either be to bend your knees, to do one leg at a time, where they pass each other. The key is that you don't let that lower back arch up off the floor. And then for me, the last one that I'll do is a back bridge push-up. This is another one that's pretty difficult for some people, so you may want to start off doing them separately. So you may want to start off by bending your knees as much as you can, pressing through your heels, squeezing your butt to get a nice stretch in front of your quads. The next portion of that will be then to go into the overhead back bridge push-up. And like I said, that is a position that if it is too challenging, you may want to start off just with the grabbing the heels, pulling your shoulders back, bridge position. Then the last 2 that I will throw in are going to work into rotation. So lying on my back, legs in the air, I slowly let my trunk drop to the side. My top knee comes down to the floor, and I'll keep it pinned there as I rotate back the opposite way. Then I'll come back, tension in my stomach, my whole body rolls as one solid piece. Leg pinned to the floor as I rotate back the other way. Slowly rotating through from one side to the other. And then the last one, I'll come up to sitting. I try and get a position where I have around a 90-degree angle of my front and back knee. A lot of times I'll tap myself under the heel to get myself into as much hip flexion as I can tolerate. And then I sit up tall, I reach around, bringing my chest down towards the ground to put some stretch in my bottom hip, and I'll press that knee into the floor, hold for 5 seconds, and come back out. So as I turn, I put a nice stretch on the muscles in the back outside of my hip. I reach in a forward direction to where I feel that stretch, and then I press this knee into the floor to engage that area while it's in a stretch position, rotating in and out of it. And then I'll switch, same thing on the opposite side. Coming around to where I feel that tension on the outside of my hip, light pressure into this knee, hold for 5 seconds, and come back out. One common mistake is people don't rotate enough and they'll start pressing too early. You want to make sure you get through that full rotation prior to pressing into the floor. So that's a nice warm-up sequence or nightly sequence before you go to bed, which is what I use it for, especially on days that I don't exercise.